A lot of people are talking these days about the grind. It's not too hard if you're paying attention to the social medias to come across some sort of uh, diatribe about how UX has lost its way, how product work has lost its way, how it's become a sort of tool of capitalism and it's no longer inspiring, and that the reason that people got into this work is just not not living out its promise. And people are burning out. People are thinking of changing careers. This has been uh, amplified by the recent rounds of layoffs in the tech community and other such things. And people are feeling like they just don't want to be part of the grind anymore. And it makes a lot of sense that that's the way it is, because a lot of work has become very much a feature factory. The the phenomena that I see, and you can tell me if this is what you see, the product team is forced to prioritize work based on what they think will move some critical internal needles that um, have been arbitrarily picked, that somebody in senior management believes that these needles that need to be moved because they represent some sort of essential business metrics, but nobody really knows for sure. So a lot of the work seems sort of arbitrary and um, prioritized. Everything is always top priority. And then the work is sort of dished out to the development team, and there's this overwhelming belief that nothing is getting done if the developers aren't constantly coding all the time. So everything is made to feed the development machine and make sure coding is always happening. And so every process has been optimized to keep developers coding all the time. Unfortunately, this is how Agile has evolved, and things like SAFe and other scaled Agile processes are even worse, in that they really are this sort of production machine. And then the design team is given work to ensure that developers have something to code. So they're asked to produce things just ahead of the development cycles. But they don't know why they're designing the thing. They don't know if they're doing a good job because no research is being done. And because no research is being done, um, uh, there's always these questions: is what we're doing actually going to be the right thing? And research can't be done because there's never time for research. It's the first thing to be cut out of all the projects. And finally, we get to some definition of finished, and we ship what we have, and nobody is happy with what's delivered. And there are all sorts of promises of how we're going to fix all the problems in a future release, but there's never ever a chance to ever fix the problems. We just throw them onto a backlog, which is just this repository of optimistic, unmet opportunity. And the the net result is that nobody seems to be happy with this process. It is just a grind, right? It's just a repeating grind that happens over and over again. And if you're caught in one of these cycles, you're in this sort of feature factory. I've I'm very sorry. It's it really is not an ideal existence to be in that, and I think that this is just the way things have evolved, right? This is not a fulfilling process. It is not something that people like. It's a grind. It leads to burnout, and I can see why large numbers of people are just sort of unhappy with the way this has happened. And I think the turning point came when a bunch of folks wrote some books around how really what we're doing is product delivery, and that we need to set up these factories. And there are even people who talk about this in a positive way, that what we need to have are software factories that just deliver software continually. And this is how we lost our focus. As soon as we made product delivery the critical output of what teams do, we pretty much lost the focus of what we're trying to make happen. And um, and I think that was a choice, but I think it was a choice where people didn't realize what was going to result, what the outcomes were going to be. And it's something that we can fix. It's something that we can do better. Grinding out product deliveries is not meaningful work. It doesn't motivate people to keep moving forward. It particularly doesn't motivate people to do things when things get hard. And as a result, I think we just see a constant degradation in the quality of the work. We feel like things are really not what we signed up for, and we end up just, at some point potentially giving up in terms of what the options are. Um, uh, and so that is what we want to talk about today. What is that choice? And what can we do otherwise to be able to make work inspiring and meaningful and be something that delivers better results all the time? And that's what we're going to talk about here. So let's talk about that. Now, before I get into this, there's a fantastic resource that has not nearly gotten the play it needs to get in our community, which is a book and some work that's been done by Josephine Wong and Daniel Zook. They wrote this fantastic book called Make Work Meaningful: From Sleepwalking to Sparkle. And it talks about what it needs to sort of find that intrinsic motivation, that spark that people need to really make their own day meaningful, their own work meaningful. The trick here is that we need to do that ourselves, and that's really key. And I'm not gonna spend much time today talking about all the things that they talk about, because they do a much better job. I just recommend you go and get the book and give it a solid read, because I think you'll find it quite inspirational. But instead, what I want to talk about today is really the power that we have to bring meaning to other people's work, because as UX professionals, we are uniquely situated to actually bring meaning to all the work our organization is delivering. And we're not currently making things effective. So I put a link to Joe and Dan's book in the notes, so feel free to go look at that and find that book and make it yours. But we're going to focus here on what we can do to take this a step beyond and actually bring the meaning of UX work as a driver of meaningful work throughout the organization. And this is because people need their work to be meaningful. I mean, work is work. And if we just wanted to have a job that we went and did to earn cash so that we could spend our free time doing all the things that we want to do, spending that cash, we probably wouldn't have gotten into this space. We probably would have found something else to do that would just raise that sort of capital. Very few people I know who come into the UX space do it just for money. It's nice to get paid, and we should get paid what we're worth, and we should be valued based on what we bring to the organization and to the world, and I'm all for that. But I don't think that's the number one motivator for most people in the UX field, primarily because if that's what you're going to do, there are easier ways to make a lot more money um, than what is currently day-to-day UX work. I think people come into this field because we actually are intrinsically motivated to do things that go beyond just the value of the artifacts we deliver. What we want to do is we want to make things that are better in the world. And that gets lost in the product delivery grind. We lose that idea that what we're trying to do here is make things better in the world. Instead, what we find is that we're sort of stuck in this place where um, what we're doing is just back into the factory, back into the grind, trying to just constantly keep up with the conveyor belt that is just moving in front of us at an increasing speed with increasing volume, and we're just stuck in that factory model. So we need to find a reason to make this real, to make this better, and that's key because it's not only us that are feeling this. When I talk to product people, when I talk to developers, what I find is they are in that same grind. They are feeling the same sort of pressure. And they think that just doing it better is going to get them there, but in fact, it doesn't get them there, and that's the problem that we run into. So we have to sort of look beyond this. And the way to think about this is that any sort of meaningful activity is an activity that goes beyond its surface value, right? I mean, um, you go in and you buy a service, you take your clothes to the dry cleaners and they get the spots out of your clothes. There's a price that they charge. And if somebody down the street charges a cheaper price, well, you'll go to them because you don't really know what the difference is between the two dry cleaners. And so as a result, that has a sort of surface value to it. And it's valued just based on what are people willing to charge for that thing. But when something is meaningful, it has much more value than just that transactional instant surface value. The value it has gets bigger and better, and so that is key. We want to look at what we call latent value that drives people to pursue better outcomes. And when we find that latent value, people are willing to put in a lot more effort, and it doesn't feel as much like a grind. In fact, it feels quite energizing. The reason that the factory model feels like a grind is that it's completely exhausting. There's nothing that's returned to the people who are participating in it. They are just giving, 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 and they're not getting anything back. But when we do something that's meaningful, when we do something that has that extra value, then we get back that extra value, and that re-energizes, that replenishes, and that becomes something that people believe is worth doing. So what we're seeing here is this idea that there's a way to make the work energizing. And it's not just the UX work that's energizing, it's all of the work that's energizing. If we can make all of the work energizing, we would be in a place that would constantly reinvigorate us. And that reinvigoration would then allow us to have some extra stored energy when things get particularly hard and we really want to push to get something out the door that's really we believe in. So that's what we're talking about here, this idea of finding energizing work over exhausting work, and not just for us, but for everybody who's working on the products and services that we're trying to deliver. And one way that we can do this, and this is important, is that we can get that work to shift from exhausting to energizing when we see how the work improves people's lives. And that's the thing. If we're not improving people's lives, why are we doing these things? Why are we delivering these products? Why are we shipping these services? What is it that we are trying to do? Everybody goes into the process thinking, okay, we can improve people's lives. We can make things better in this way. But then we get lost because our lens contracts, and what we can see is just the process of trying to just deliver a thing and then deliver another thing and then deliver another thing after that. And it's that factory model that's problematic. And so we have to break away from that. We have to keep reminding people that there is a reason we're doing this. There is something that's out there. And this is what we as UX leaders can really do for our organization, because everybody else is sort of inward focused, right? The product people are being pressured and incentivized to focus on making sure the business is getting what it needs to be sustainable. And that's not wrong, but being focused on the business is not being focused on the customer, on the users. And we do hear, senior executives start talking about things like being customer centric, but their actions don't translate into true customer centricity. Their actions translate back into how are we increasing revenues? How are we reducing costs? How are we growing market share? How are we making sure we get more from every customer? And how are we making sure that we're building long-term sustainable value? And while all of those things are important for the business to exist, and they are necessary, it becomes a grind when that's all we focus on, when that is just the lens, because we're just working to keep the machine fed, and we're not actually getting any of that restorative, regenerative value back. So we have to focus on the things that really energize us. And as UX leaders, because we are the ones who are most focused on what change means to our users and our customers, we are in this place to talk about how that change needs to be about improving people's lives. And this gets us back to something which, if you've been around for a while, you've seen me talk about before, which is the difference between outputs and outcomes. I am so happy that I have found my pens. They do exactly what I want them to do. When we talk about delivery, that's an output, right? When we're delivering a product, we are focused primarily on delivering something into the world. And the thing about delivering something into the world is it has no inherent quality. By that, I mean, we get the same reward for delivering something that is great and delivering something that sucks, right? There's no difference. Just delivering something doesn't guarantee it's good. And because there's no inherent reward, we have to create these sort of external factors to try and tie it back to what we do, but it never works, right? All these satisfaction scores and net promoter score and um, what else? Sus and all of these things are sort of patches on the and band-aids to try and deal with the fact that what we're delivering into the world doesn't have any measurable inherent quality. And because it is without measurable inherent quality, we can't tell if we do a good job. And because it's actually easier to deliver something that's crappy than it is to deliver something that's good, we're actually optimizing for crappy all the time because we're cutting corners that would have made it good, and we have no feedback loop that ensures that good stays good or is even great. So outputs, by focusing on outputs, we get ourselves into a loop that is really optimized for delivering what is in essence mediocre quality work. And that's a key piece of the problem here. If we focus on outcomes, we get ourselves into a different place. Outcomes are the changes that happen in the world. And the thing about outcomes is that change can only happen in two directions. It either makes something better or it makes something worse. Did I tell you I'm really happy to have my pens? So we can either make things better in the world or we can make things worse in the world. And that's inherent in a change. And the thing about this is that we can observe very closely when we're making things better and when we're making them worse. We can see the difference happen before our very eyes. And if we can see it, we can measure it. And if we can measure it, it's now a measurable inherent quality, something we don't get with an output. And because of that, we're now at a place where we have a way to tell that we are making the world a better place. And it's that feedback loop that's really critical. And nowhere else in the organization does anyone know how to get that feedback loop other than what we do in UX. And that's why we are the ones here who can bring this to the forefront. We can make this a priority. And we can do this with a simple tool that we call a UX outcome. A UX outcome basically is the answer to a question, which is, if we do a great job delivering this product, whose life do we improve and how? That's what our UX outcome is. It's a statement that says, when we deliver this thing, we're going to change the world in a way that improves the life for specific people. We can see the improvement. And because we can see the improvement, things get substantially more meaningful because we've just made somebody's life better by making something that improved their life. And we can tell those stories. We can find the people who need improvement in their life. We can then work with the team to build something that will improve their life. And then we can actually realize that improvement by delivering it to the people and seeing their lives get improved. And the more we can tell that story, the more meaning comes into the work that we do. And because design is a team sport, it's not just the designers that are doing this. It's the developers who are building it, the product people who are making sure it happens, doing all the work that product people do. And the result is that we see the improved outcomes in the world. We can do this through our metrics. We can do this through our research. And all of that drives the meaning that we want to have. So that question, the UX outcome, that question, if we do a great job, how do we improve someone's life? That question is sort of the real sort of key to this meaningfulness. But the answering the question by itself is just sort of a surface thing. What we need on top of that is what we talked about last week. And if you didn't join us last week, I highly recommend you go back and watch the recording that's in the archives from last week, because I talked at great extent about a technique known as experience visions. And experience visions are how we tell the story of the improvement. The experience vision gives us a look into the future, the improvements we're going to deliver. And it talks about that in a way that helps people see how the work that we do improves people's lives. You can think of the UX outcome and the experience vision as two sides of the same coin. I actually like explaining it as if it's a book. If you pick up a mystery novel, on the back of the novel are usually 2 or 3 sentences that explain the basic story of what's going to happen in the book. And it doesn't give you any depth, but if you like that sort of book, it's going to be the thing that gets you to decide to read it or not. Whereas the experience vision, that's the actual story in the book. That's all the little details that make up the narrative that talks about what happens in that outcome. And so the experience vision is an extension of the UX outcome. And that vision allows us to communicate to the people around us who might not realize how bad the experiences of our users are today, so that they can see what it would look like in the future. And this notion of future is key, because as I mentioned last week, we can think of the work that we do as a sort of change over time, right? So we start with where we are today. And at some point, there's a future. That's just how time works. And the thing about this is that today we can imagine that the experiences that our users and our customers have all sorts of flaws. We know this because we've done the research. We've gone out, we've met people, we've seen them trying to do the things that our product, our service is supposed to do. And we can see how their experience is not anywhere close to ideal. Their experience is far from it. If it is close to ideal, why are we working on something that's better? Right? Why are we continuing to work on it? Just let them have it. Let's go work on something else. So the only reason that we're moving in towards this future where we're going to deliver something at some point is because we think we can make the world better for those people. And so this idea of making the world better, this is this is key. So this line here is the line I draw for when we're going to do nothing different than what we've been doing all along. This is the grind, right? This is the factory model, right? Everything we did up to this point got us to this place where we have this flawed experience, and we're just going to keep doing that, which means in the future, we're going to continue to have this flawed experience. Not only that, we're going to probably add more flaws. So it's a worse experience if we do nothing different. That's the way entropy works. Whereas we can imagine another point on this timeline, an alternative future. We can call it the better future. And the better future has the flaws that we've identified for today all fixed. They've been dealt with. They're done. We have put them to bed. So this is what makes this better future better. We can see that the future doesn't have to be this future where we do nothing different. It's a future where we're going to do something different. But the grind is what happens when we can clearly see this better future, but nobody else on the team can see it. Nobody else on the team is willing to do something different because they're not motivated to do something different, because the grind has captured them and they don't see any reason to do things that are more risky or harder. And that's the thing. The doing something different is always more risky. It's always harder. So we end up keep doing what we've always done. And when we keep doing what we've always done, we get to the future where things aren't any better. That's what makes it demotivating. That's what makes it exhausting. It would be energizing if we could believe that we were going to get to this world where things were better. And that's the key. This idea of getting to this better future, and it won't be a straight path to get there, but it will be a path that gets us to that future. That is what we got to motivate people to do. And we do that by showing them the difference. What the experience vision tells is it explains the difference between the experiences we're going to deliver in this future, where we do nothing different, and the experiences that we're going to deliver in the better future. And we need to tell those stories. Now, the way that we're going to tell those stories is we're going to have to do a bunch of research. We're going to have to explain to the people, the developers, the product managers, the stakeholders, the executives, why it is worth taking this path of doing something different. We're going to have to help them really bought into this better future, really sell it. And the problem is that there's insulation that builds up between the users and the people who are making all the decisions that are basically along this path of doing nothing different. That insulation builds up over time. You know, when organizations are very small, like really small, like, you know, when a company is only 3 people and it has to survive, it knows what the people there know what the customers need very, very well. Because in order to get from one day to the next, they have to make sure the customers are coming in and paying them. And they're only going to pay them if they get value from what they deliver. And they're only going to get value from what they deliver if it's actually making their life better. So when companies are very, very small, they're in this place where they understand what customers need. But as they grow, they lose that because insulation builds up between the people who make the most important decisions and have the most influence on what we do next and what those customers and users do with the product. and they no longer understand that the product is delivering value. They think that, you know, the value comes from them just being brilliant people and coming up with ideas like, well, we should just add blockchain and AI into it, instead of actually finding out what is happening in the experience that the users have. So what we need to do is we need to help them understand. We need to go out into the world and we need to see what the experiences of our users are. And the experiences of what our users are these things that you know, move users through their day. And either those things are delightful or they're frustrating. And if we go out and we visit somebody, and you know, let's say that person's name is Edna, real person, we go and we visit Edna. When we visit Edna, we can see what bits are delightful, but also what bits are frustrating. And it's the frustrating bits on the roller coaster of experience here, of Edna's experience, that we can see are not optimal, not delightful, not even what we intended. So we can ask the question, well, what would it take to make these frustrating bits more and more delightful? If we can raise them to be less frustrating and more delightful, we can get Edna to the point where she has a delightful experience all the way across. And it's this difference, the difference in this space here, this liminal space between Edna's current experience and the experience that we want Edna to have, that this is where the meaning lives. Meaning comes completely from this space in here. So it is that story that we need to talk to, that we need to explain to folks. And ideally, we can get them to see Edna. We can get them out into the field to talk to Edna, to see what that experience is like. And of course, Edna is not this unusual person. Edna represents lots of people. And we know that Edna represents lots of people because we've gone out and we've met the Taylors and the Christians and the Molinas and the Harleys. And in all of those people, we have seen how often they have the same sort of issues that Edna has, which means if we solve for Edna's frustrations, we can make lots of people's lives better. And that is the story that brings the excitement and exhilaration that comes with making life energizing for the people who are building these things. Because now we are capable of telling a story about how things are better. Of course, if they're better for Edna, and Edna's a customer, Edna is going to see this as being more valuable to her. And she's willing to pay the extra money for this. This is how companies that deliver quality experiences make so much money. The Disneys and the Apples of the world. They do it by delivering things that people think really make their lives better. And what motivates the people who work at those places is how much they're making lives of people better. Those people aren't talking about how much of a grind the work is. They're not thinking that they're in a factory model because the organization is focused on delivering this. But no one else in the organization is going to help us get there. We have to be the ones who do this. This is what strategic UX leadership is actually about. This is what it means to really deliver great experiences into the world. not just tweaking dialog boxes until the fields are obvious. It's about solving real problems that are causing real frustration for the Ednas of the world. And when we can talk to those stories, when we can talk to what that is, we can make life better for all the people involved. And you know what? There's actually a fairly straightforward path to this. You start with something we call exposure. Years ago, I wrote an article about exposure hours, where we clearly saw that the organizations that spent time making sure that people on the team got to spend 2 hours every 6 weeks, that's 20 minutes a week, right? Spending 20 minutes a week actually seeing what it's like to be a user, actually seeing the experience that people had, that those folks were far more likely to see how their product was improving people's lives, and therefore they felt that the product or service working on it was more meaningful. The developers, the product people, everybody has to have this exposure. So if we can get that exposure, we can improve the research that we're doing, show the value of that, and get people to see what the lives of our users are like, and work on this area of meaning so that we can deliver these aspirational experiences that are the reason we got into this business to begin with. And that's what I came to talk to you about this week, that it's actually telling the story of how we improve people's lives is the core of how we help make people feel that the work they do is more meaningful, while at the same time raising the value of UX across the organization, because it's the delivery of improvements to people's lives that make people energized and want to come to work and want to move forward. And so this is the real sort of key to this effort. Jared here. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so you'll get more videos like this. If you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, consider joining our Leaders of Awesomeness community. It's completely free, home to over 50,000 UX leaders who regularly share questions, ideas, inspiration about their experiences. The link is in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.